All right, a bit of a hotly debated topic today. We're talking spine movement and why the spine moves in certain ways throughout the entirety of your golf swing. Let's dive. All right, taking a look at the spine today in the golf swing. And the spine is freaking awesome because you can do all this different stuff, right? It can go into flexion states, extension states. Obviously, it can rotate and it can laterally bend. So it can really do any number of these things and any combination of these three items. And this topic is hotly debated, right, in our game. What's healthy movement in the spine and what's not? And it seems like every coach, every instructor that you go to has a different idea of what that truly means and what we need to see in the golf swing in order to preserve back health. So if we're looking at this though, let's first take a look at us as human beings. We are vertebrates, just like lizards, snakes. If you watch babies crawl, they're always bending. Lateral bend, folks, is a fine thing. If you bend your spine in the appropriate way, it's absolutely healthy. You are a vertebrate. We're designed in this way to be able to move, and our spine is accommodating for those certain actions and certain movements. Now, I'm also not saying that there's no such thing as back injury in our game. Obviously, it's a prevalent item. When we're looking at injury in our game, typically it is back, spine health, that's the correlator, that produces this injury prevalence in our game. And typically, what we're hearing is lower back health. That's the issue. So when we're looking at this, let's first identify like what's actually going on in the spine to create the damage here. So if we're looking at the three different areas of the spine, we've got up on top here, we've got the C-spine, cervical spine. We go down a little bit, now we're in the T-spine, thoracic spine, and we're down here into the lumbar or the L-spine. Now, if we're looking at the L-spine, lumbar spine is designed to go into certain amounts of extension and flexion states. Kind of period there. It is not designed to rotate. Those discs, those vertebrae, rather, are not designed to rotate in heavy amounts. They're also not designed to go into lateral bend in heavy amounts. So what we're looking to do is allocate rotation and allocate side bend in different regions. And the higher up you go on this, like let's just call it a tree trunk, the higher up you go, the more pliability we have up in these like higher regions. Like let's take a look at the C-spine, for example. If I wanted to turn my head this way or turn my head this way, for most folks, pretty easy thing to do. And so as you leak down into like the T-spine, you still have the ability to go ahead and rotate fine in here. This is all T-spine rotation. As well as lateral bend. If I take my head, again, my C-spine goes this way, side to side. I can do this with relative ease, and it's okay for me to do that in a generally healthy way. So, if we understand this, just knowing that, first off, is a great place to start, just the design of our spine. And again, just to kind of finalize this, to take one step back before going to the next item here. Injury in our game typically, not always, comes from excessive lateral bend in the L-spine, as well as excessive rotation in the L-spine. And so what that causes is inflammation because the space between our facet joints as you're going down the spine shrinks. If I'm going lateral bend, we'll start to get these facet joints pinching and impeding space. And as soon as you do that, that creates cellular damage. Cellular damage immediately is a cause for inflammation, and now we have pain. That results as pain. So this is part of the reason why we are always advocating for a certain amount of pelvic drop. What does pelvic drop allow for? It is, in a way, elongating the spine so that the space between my vertebrae, the facet joints, is adequate. So as I move, as obviously I'm going to turn, I'm a golfer, I'm going to rotate. As I do that, I have enough space in the areas, in the regions of my spine that's needed to preserve the health of my back or my spine. So when we're looking at this in the golf swing, typically what we see is in healthy patterns, we see some amount in this transitional space of this trail hip working into more flexion because of the drop. Now, drop is not me standing here and performing a straight leg deadlift, right? If I'm right here and I'm just going hinge and back up, this is not what I'm advocating at all. What I'm advocating is more of a squat type of pattern. So if you go into the gym, you have a trainer that's worth a darn, every one of them goes, okay, eyes to the ceiling, and now as you squat, the knees cannot pitch forward. So in essence, my knees aren't going in this space. I'm keeping the knees where they are in space, head up, drop my booty. Now, if we just take a look at this, my spine is in a bit more extension at that point than I started at. Now, what's extension, what's flexion in the spine? Think of flexion as more like roly-poly mode, so I'm taking my pelvis, tucking it under, I'm taking my chin and tucking it into my chest, and I just keep rolling in here. This is like excessive spine flexion. If I go the opposite way, where my head starts to work up and I drop my booty, my spine is now moving into more of an extension state there. So dropping, okay, and again, like taking a step back, our spine is designed, our L spine, our lumbar, is designed to go into some amount of flexion and extension states. It's completely fine to do so. Very healthy pattern. Now, if I'm going to drop appropriately here and work my spine in this manner, what that does is it creates more hip flexion. And we want this to happen in this transitionary space. So really, as the golf club is continuing to climb up and away here, and we see this out of our favorite movers, what we'll see is a dropping in the pelvis, a squat pattern, as the handle or the golf club or my arms continue to rise. So if I'm going here, whoa, see how the handle continues to rise and I'm starting to drop. And if you notice, see how my knees are not pitching in this space? And if you watch my booty, it invades this wall, if you will. This is kind of a hot topic now for a lot of coaches, is we draw this line on the player's rump, and what we want them to do is at least stay on that wall, not come off the wall, stay on the wall or invade that wall even greater. And that's all because of this drop state in the pelvis. So that's number one. If we're looking at just general job duties for our body and movement, the pelvis's main role, its main job is to drop. We want that level to drop. And so from there, if we're looking at more, okay, how am I now moving from there to move into the golf ball? Obviously, we need some amount of rotation. The main rotator in the golf swing, we talk a lot about this, is mostly in the trunk, in my rib cage. So if I'm taking my pelvis and simply dropping it, what I'm doing to move away from the target and towards the target is always rotating my trunk either away or towards the target. So if we're looking at just general, like big global maps here, we're looking at rotation here in the rib cage. If I'm looking at my spine and what region of my spine is rotating now, it's absolutely in the thoracic. I'm not rotating down in here. This is more, I'm allocating lumbar rotation. Again, no. If I'm up here, thoracic rotation, much healthier pattern. So items that get people in trouble, we talk about hip depth a lot. If players immediately are looking to get this hip deeper, leans into that unhealthy pattern because I'm allocating rotation in that lumbar spine instead of rotating in the thoracic in my trunk to start to move away. So if we're looking at general sequencings here, the start of the golf swing would come from a rotation in my rib cage, thoracic rotation. As I'm finishing this rotation in the backswing and my arms start to elevate, that's the start of transition. That's when I'm dropping. So if I'm going in here, if I'm moving in here, now all of a sudden I'm starting to look nice. The pelvis is dropping. At the same time, what we're going to see is if the arms are elevating, so again, this is just simple shoulder flexion is what makes the arms elevate and work up. As I'm doing that, if I do this with enough speed, and even like shoulder flexion can just be this map of where I'm moving the arms away, and I talk about this in one of our other videos. I think it's titled, Don't Raise the Arms in the Golf Swing. That's an interesting title, but in essence what we're talking about is sending energy in the handle or in my hands away from me. So I'm not necessarily actively trying to raise my arms. They will, just because the force direction that I'm sending in the handle or in the golf club is always level away. If I do that with enough speed, look at what happens to the arms. Now, if you look at this, if you just watch my spine as I'm making this action, notice how my spine all of a sudden starts to work into more extension. Now, I'm not saying that we need to get crazy here and actively move the spine into excessive extension here. I'm not saying that at all. But we see this again out of our favorite movers. Look at Victor Hovland in this transitional space. Like as he's going from roughly P3, which is where the lead arm is level to the ground, all the way up into the top at P4, the arms are elevating. That's going to take him into more C and T-spine extension. At the same time I'm dropping my pelvis, my entire spine is elongating in that extension pattern. So if we're looking at this, we're going from here, transition, the arms continue to swing away from me as I start to drop, and now all of a sudden look at what the back and what the spine starts to look like. We see it elongate, we see it move into passive extension, not active extension. I'm not actively trying to sit here and like bang up my spine by actively moving it into extension. It's because of the combination of the arms rising, lifting, elevating as I drop the pelvis and move into more hip flexion. When we do that, we see the spine, the entirety of it, in great movers, our preferred movers, starts to move into extension. If we take another step back and just look at what the setup really provides and what it looks like, to get my arms, and we see this out of all players really, the arms need to be out in front of my trunk. In order to do that, my scapula go around my rib cage into what would be considered scap protraction. They go around me here to get my arms out in front. Anytime I'm feeling this, like scap protraction is almost like this bear hug look, like both arms are going around me this way to get my arms on top of my chest. Just this look, notice how my T-spine, even my C-spine, moves into more flexion compared to a neutral state. If you're in a cable row machine, pulling the scaps now retract. That makes the spine go into more extension. We're sure as heck not here at the address position. We're more in this space here with the scaps protracting. Humerus bones get up on top of my trunk, in front of my trunk, in this anterior space, and now I can hold the golf club. So what we see out of, again, preferred movers is a bit more flexion state in the C-spine, so the eyes start to point down, and it leaks into my T-spine to accommodate for where I need the arms to be at setup. Now, we just talked about how we move. We're starting to turn here. The rib cage is in charge of a lot of that rotation. T-spine is in charge of a lot of the rotation early in the backswing. Rotating here. As I continue to rotate, arms elevate and my pelvis drops. Now I move into more of an extension state in the spine, but I don't stay in that extension state. The reason being is as I turn here, I'm looking to shoot my arms. All the energy comes out of my trunk, perpendicular where my trunk is in space in general. So if I'm shooting energy away from me here, my scaps go back into protraction because I'm shooting all this energy out. What does protraction leak into in the spine? Back into flexion. So it's amazing, just kind of taking a breath here as we're talking through this. The spine, we've talked about rotation in the spine, and we've talked about extension and flexion states in the spine. It does a ton. The spine does a ton in the golf swing without us really recognizing it or knowing it. And again, most of this discussion here, I don't want folks going out there and like, okay, I need to move the spine into extension and flexion and rotate. It's this like complicated map. It's just the point of this is a better understanding that staying in posture in the golf swing is, in a lot of ways, a very misunderstood statement, because people think, all right, I'm going to lock my spine down and I'm just going to rotate this thing around this way. And just looking at that, it's like, that's non-athlete mode. The spine, when we see great movers, we see this like beautiful cadence in the spine. It's like lizard mode, snake mode, vertebrate mode. You can move the spine. It can laterally bend, which we're going to get into in just a second here, but it can absolutely go into certain amounts of flexion and extension states based on the combination of movements in your golf swing. And it can absolutely rotate in certain areas of the spine, throughout certain areas of the spine. Now, moving into lateral bend, massive hot topic, right? The golf swing is 100%, like, again, in our preferred map, 100% a hitter type pattern. So what's the difference between a throwing type pattern and a hitting type pattern? Pretty simple, in that a throwing type pattern is always moving an object in space. So if I had the golf club and I moved it over the top here, just like I would like a baseball or a football, the scapula is elevating and protracting, meaning it's going across and above here this way. This is the active throw. And so the look of the spiral tissue, how it moves, in order to throw, I would have, as I elevate here, see how the spiral tissue elongates here and then goes over. Okay, so this is an over pattern. A hitting pattern is more moving an object in space below my center of mass. So hockey, baseball, golf, all hitting type patterns. Sledgehammer, axe. If I'm going this way, that's a hitting type pattern. Okay, imagine taking an axe, and if I went up and over to hit downward, that would be a throwing type pattern. If I'm more looking to hit like a tree level here, this is more a hitting type pattern. So if we're just looking at this, the scapula in hitting patterns in the forward direction, if I'm looking to hit, the scapula would retract, depress, and protract this way. So it's under. We call this under spiraling. Under spiral. See how this spiral tissue is motoring in order to move me in a space where I can hit underneath my center of mass. Throwing type patterns, again, retract, elevate, scap elevation, protract. So I would go this way. That's the main difference in the two. Now, if we're looking at that, spine bend, lateral bend in the spine happens because of this move. And if we're looking at the scaps, so again, the scaps are just these wings that sit right back behind you, your shoulder blades. In a hitting pattern, if I'm retracted here and this scap is depressing, meaning the scap is working down and then protracting, just looking at the axis of my shoulders and looking at the axis of my hips, they are different. See how level here and how tilted I am here. Now, that is absolutely lateral bend. But notice where it is. Like all the activity, a lot of the activity is up here in my it's because of the shoulder blades. So the bend that we're going to see is between the shoulder blades. What region of the spine is that? That's the T-spine. And it leaks up even into the C-spine. And you'll see players look like this. Like their C-spine starts to laterally bend here as they start to hit. So this entire C and T-spine, if I'm in here, there goes the depression state. Look at what my C-spine looks like. Look at what my skull looks like. And I start to look in here. That is the shape that we're seeing out of wonderful movers. Again, drop state. Now as I start to move this spiral, look at my eye line. My eye line's here. C-spine bend goes into the T-spine. But in between, really right underneath the shoulder blades, all the way down into L5, lumbar 5, vertebrate 5, all the way there. Very, very stable when it comes to rotation and it comes to lateral bend. So what does that mean? That means a heck of a lot better chance for you to stay healthy in your movement. So, a lot of this discussion here is not myth busting. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with just moving the needle in your favor when it comes to healthy movement. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for, folks, is for you to move in a way that makes it easier for you to control the instrument, what the golf club's doing through the hip, where the face is, where the path is, the bottom out. You can do it with speed, all the things that make you feel really good as a player, as a golfing athlete. But also, at the same time, if you are moving in a way that's healthy, shoot, you can play golf until you're 85. And these thresholds are different for everybody. I mean, some people are highly pliable, others aren't. That's okay. You can still have the same type of map in your mind and movement and motoring the golf club in space and maintain this wonderful, healthy pattern. So, working this in, easiest ways to do this. Understand, this is the hit. Feel the scap. Woo. It goes retract, depress, protract. There's the hit. If I'm turning the chest while I'm doing that, there's the hit. What does that do to the club shape? So it would go on top of the plane, under, and out. On top, under, out. But notice how I'm rotating the chest. Look at this trail scap. Boom. It's in this space. As I'm doing that, I can be dropping the pelvis. So I'm going chest rotation, drop pelvis, scap and ribs rotate, and that's the hit. So we'd go turn. Now, as this lead arm elevates to get me to the top, I'd be dropping. There goes the lead arm elevate, I'm dropping. Now if I go scap and ribs, there's the hit. So we'd go backswing, transition, scap and hit. If we just buff that off, just that map, I'm here, there. It's just simple. We see this wonderful bounce to this system too. Chest, pelvis, chest. Where's the club motoring? Chest, under, because of that beautiful scap work. But the spine maintains this beautiful, healthy, vertebrate type movement that allows you to move with all the friggin' precision and speed that you want in a very healthy manner. Kind of some deep dives in here. Ask questions. Follow us, subscribe. We are here, the only reason, again, that we're doing this is we want somebody, you, to watch this video, get inspired by movement, go out to your range, implement some of these maps, and hit better and better shots. But again, especially in this video, doing so in a healthy manner. Go at some thumpies, people. Let's go.